Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LeanTossup Call of Duty League podcast. We are here for Minor 1, which is actually pretty exciting because this is actually technically the first ever minor that's going to happen. We've had majors before, obviously, in Call of Duty. This is the first time I actually had a minor. And to talk about it, I am joined, as always, by my co-host, CDLMetrics. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right, yeah. Something different to talk about, which is nice. We'll get into our thoughts about the tournament a little later. I've been a little more pessimistic the last couple days as I've been thinking through how this weekend is going to go. But if you're a little more optimistic, then maybe there's some things I'm not considering. But nonetheless, COD League is back after a little bit of a hiatus. And the meta has shifted already a little bit, new map pool, and we'll see how stuff plays out. But yeah, just excited to get back into some action.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I think we're gonna be having a really interesting year. And I'm actually really excited for this tournament. I didn't think I'd be as excited for this, but it's actually a really nice break between the weekly grind of just random matches. This gives you something, and it has very significant relevance, which we'll talk about in 1 second. Let's see here. There we go. Okay. It's the right arrow for this. Models versus markets and the weekly recaps. These were your picks for week 1. You had Rocker, both of their matches against LEG and against Boston. They won both of those. And then you also had Cloud9 versus Map 2 versus Texas. They did not win that. And then the most recent week, too, we didn't record an episode for this week, but you put these out on Twitter. You had Seattle plus 1.5, and then Carolina Royal Ravens plus 137, and then Thieves minus 2.5. That went 1 and 2. But you are still up in significantly because of the size of the moneyline place from week 1. Overall,
Yeah, decent start. I will say I lucked out a little bit, especially week 1. I did double up on Minnesota, and that did come through. But if you rewatch those matches, yeah, I don't know if they should have won either of them, but thankfully they pulled those out. Yeah, and then the week 2 stuff didn't work quite as well. I was fading Optic in a way because they were shifting their team from having Pred in the lineup to having Hook in the lineup. And I thought that would matter a lot in a 1 week quick change like that, especially with a player as good as Pred. But turns out they're better with Hook, as it seems like they always are for some reason. So that didn't work well. And then I faded my Minnesota picks from week 1 with the Thieves to win in a sweep. But Rocker came through, I think, in the search in that one. So yeah, you win some, you lose some. But overall, a decent start to the year, just considering the prices on those.
yeah, I think so too. I was also watching those. I think I was on Minnesota with both of you for both those picks in week 1, and that was a sweat. That was like when they won, I was like, I don't think I should have won this match,
Right.
but they did, and that's all that counts. But there will be a rematch for one of those this week, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But CDL points contest update. So this is a little interesting. So you're not just showing last year. Obviously, you showed our weekly, what we had and what you had each week for me versus you when we did the drafting, but now you're showing everyone. This is the entire leaderboard here, and you're doing pretty well. However, though, Doug Leby there destroying us here currently, but I'm sure we'll have him on at some point. He could talk to us about it. But this is the thing. Now, the interesting thing about it, obviously, he's at 130, just crushing all of us because he picked 3 teams that went 4-0. You got 90, I've got 60. Again, a relatively close board. No one has taken a commanding lead at this point yet. But this is where the minors are going to come more into play. It's who's going to be winning tournaments. And that's why, do we really think that Ultra are going to win tournaments? Maybe they've actually looked pretty good. And even with Carolina, they've also looked really good. That was a really good pick by Doug Leby there. I'm a little jealous about that pick. That pick's really good. Now, could they fade a little bit coming up soon? I think that's very possible. But for right now, they look like a very dominant team. My model absolutely loves them. And we won't see them until Saturday. But yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic there. And you and I, we both picked FaZe, as a lot of people did. And that's currently coming up. Snake Eyes there. But for others, Thieves are performing roughly as expected. But yeah, some overperformers, some underperformers, and you can very clearly see it from this graph here.
Yeah, this is fun. I'm interested to see how this plays out throughout the year, and I'm glad I put this sort of contest out there because I was curious just to see what kind of teams or lineups or whatever you want to call them people built. And we have quite a few duplicates, which I thought was a possibility. I know Unfortunately, Robert, your lineup is duplicated by the real PD Gaming, who's a little further down there. Unfortunately, you can't finish in first alone, but I think that's the only dupe of your lineup in the system. I figured that would happen, but still just interested to see how people played it. I did mention in our first recording that there was an entry that did a 5-team build. Unfortunately, that team is in dead last. Vivian OW there at the bottom. We'll see if it plays out well. I think LAG will accrue some points eventually. Cloud9, I think, will bounce back a little. Yeah, a lot to go. And I won't share this every week, but probably before and after the majors, just because those will be big point shifts for everybody. But yeah, shout out Doug. My goodness. So the optimal, like the most amount of points you could have with a lineup is 150. If he switched out Miami for Boston, he would literally have the perfect lineup. So yeah, shout out to him. He's absolutely killing it. But one lineup that I think is interesting, that I think will do pretty well, and I don't think it's duplicated at all. It's the guy right in the middle of the screen, Dog3033. From what we've seen so far, Atlanta FaZe don't look like the typical Atlanta FaZe. Granted, it's only been 4 matches, but the fact that he got the other 2 sort of elite teams in Optic and LA Thieves, and then paired that with an LAG team that has yet to win, but in terms of like how they look, I think they're in for a bounce back. I think that's an interesting sort of 3-team combo that he put together. But yeah, we'll see how this all plays out. Very interested. Just to follow this throughout the year. But yeah, shout out Doug. He's absolutely killing it.
Yeah, I will say there's a couple of interesting things on this. There's 4 people who elected the same strategy that I was trying to do, but I came up just short of buying Vegas, which is really funny because they were the cheapest, obviously, and it was just, if you had a couple extra dollars there, you could buy them as well. And it currently hasn't paid off yet, but I think the thing is, I think they've had to do this. They've had to buy the whole, okay, we have this team, and then now this team's not working, so we're going to change up the team. And I think if you were a team that wasn't doing well, but you have a large money because you are functionally backed by Saudi oil money, I think if you were like, hey, is there a big name star that is currently no longer on a team? Oh, okay. So again, I obviously don't know anything, but if you're trying to find a home for Pred after Major 1, maybe this could be a place, right? If you have money, which the Vegas Falcons do have money, they could potentially get Pred, right? So that's an interesting possibility too, right? Maybe this team starts picking up players from other teams, or they just chalk this year and they're a big investor next year. I don't know, but I think that possibly if those people they might get a little bit of residual value there. But we'll have to see. But yeah, no, I mean, it's so far there's crazy value on Ultra. Ultra's far ahead of where I thought they'd be. Boston also far ahead of where I thought they'd be as well. Same as Carolina Royal Ravens. Just 4 teams that massively overperforming expectations. Cloud9 roughly where I thought they would be. I didn't think they were going to be that strong. But yeah, the point about LA Gorilla Mates, they currently have no wins, but they've had a lot of close losses, and I think they're going to start turning it around. So we'll have to see. I think there's a lot of interesting that can happen. And again, this year is going to be really important because the major wins and the minor wins are going to have huge impacts on this. Winning one minor is 30 points. So that's and the thing is with the minors, I think you have to get to what the semifinals to get any points at all. What is it? 10 points to the 2 semifinalists, 20 to the second place team, and then 30 to the winner. So not like in the major where, if you show up and you win a round, you get 10 points. No, that's not how we're not playing with that rules this time. So I think LA Thieves are probably the thing is right now, LA Thieves and say Ultra and Carolina, they all look like the same team because they all are basically in terms of points. But play out a couple majors. Are all 3 of them going to be competitive in every major? Is which one is the one can make deep run? Who can win the majors, right? If Thieves suddenly win 2 majors or Ultra wins 2 majors, then all of a sudden one's going to look a lot better of investment than another one, right? So, but yeah, no, the interesting thing about FaZe is they really have not looked good. Now, they start turning around a little bit towards the end, yes. But for now, they're still massively underperforming, so we'll have to see if that continues this week or not. This is a graph you have here in terms of ownership. What do you find interesting? And there's one kind of hilarious part in here of which team. Yeah.
Yeah, this was a surprise to me when I went back to my Google form, just because Google just auto spits out like, all right, here's what everybody picked. I really thought LA Thieves would be the highest picked team just based on the fact that they won the preseason tournament. They had a lot of hype going into the year. They were like co-favorites to win champs, basically. They had a lot of hype, and they're the cheapest of the top 3 teams. To see that they're still the second most picked team, so it's close to being the first picked team. But yeah, FaZe I thought people would shy away from just because they are the most expensive team, and like I said with Thieves, that's a comparable team that's $2 cheaper. People love Optic Texas every year. They just won champs. I thought they would be maybe more popular than FaZe as well. So yeah, FaZe being the most popular team was a surprise. Maybe with these sort of DFS type of lineup builds where you have a salary cap, I do wonder how many people built a team and then had leftover cash and said, maybe I could take my Optic and turn them into FaZe, or take my Thieves and turn them into FaZe, and then just got to that higher up team in terms of pricing. So that's a possibility, but not super surprised with how the bottom half played out. I figured Rocker would be pretty unpopular. I didn't think only one person would take them, but yeah, only one pick on Rocker. LA Gorillas, I think, are a little low, but I get why they are, just because Cloud9 were the same price, and I think most everybody agreed going into the preseason that Cloud9 was better than LA. That maybe isn't as big of a shocker as I thought. I figured Miami would be pretty popular based on the coaches poll that came out and the fact that they're relatively cheap, all things considered. But yeah, the bottom doesn't surprise me at all. Vegas even getting some love, but a lot of that I think was just people trying to fit them in if they could, just for the bonus points that they might get throughout the year. Yeah, I just thought this was a little interesting, especially with the teams at the top, just because I really thought Thieves would be popular and Optic would be maybe 1 and 2 for popularity. But yeah, I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's interesting. That is there. The interesting thing is FaZe over Optic, Cloud9 over Toronto. That seems like a really bad decision at this point. But yeah, LAG and Minnesota both very low there. Minnesota, only one person picked Minnesota. Now, does the team look particularly good? No, but that's still very low. That's the lowest of every team, basically, and those two are the lowest. But yeah, just funny, a lot of people going with the bonus Falcons points, if any, strategy. But yeah, a lot of people not believing Ultra, less believing Optic, and picking FaZe and Thieves, which is the devil they know. And it's, at least for FaZe backers, and you and I are both FaZe backers, that's not doing as well it's currently. But we'll see. Long season. FaZe seem to be coming out of it at the tail end of that, so we'll have to see how they look this week. League news. As you mentioned, obviously we have a new map, Hacienda. This is a classic map from Black Ops 4, and I think it was a remake of... I think this Hacienda wasn't even a Black Ops 4 original map. I think it was a remake of a map even before then, but it's a very classic map, though. It replaces Rewind and Hardpoint. Rewind was played 6 out of 44 times. This was the one where it was like the old, basically Blockbuster. It was the game where there was the map where there was like a video store. It replaces Rewind and Search. That was played 7 out of 35 times. Okay, so go back for a second. Margin of victory in Rewind was 64 points, so pretty high. And then the margin of victory in the other was 64. So actually, yeah, it was... The other ones are bigger blowouts. This one was a more mixy one and closer one, so now that's gone. We'll have to see what happens. And then Rewind, 7 out of 35 times, 20%, 2.9 rounds per, and then basically the 3-round margin of victory, which we saw in other maps as well. But again, that's a pretty high number compared to other years, right? Usually that sits at around a 2, right? So that's another higher number. And then they're just going to add Hacienda in as a control map, which is interesting because Vault was played 22 out of 24 times, and the other one was...
Protocol,
what's the other one?
I believe.
Protocol, yeah. Protocol was only played twice. Yeah, interesting notes on that. And also interesting that, again, a lot of blowouts, right? Usually the margin of victory stands at, about 58, something like that, and we're up to 73. That's a pretty big jump in a year over year, and same as in Search. What are your thoughts on adding this map?
Yeah, I think a lot of people expected Red Card to be the replacement in Hardpoint and in Search, just based on like how it plays. But yeah, to my surprise, it's Rewind that's gone. And I don't know, it's interesting when you think about each game mode. So Hardpoint, right? Yeah, you mentioned it. Rewind, a pretty relative to this year competitive map in terms of like margin of victory. When you compare this map to the other maps, like this map has been only been played 6 times, but of those 6 games, 3 have been really close and 3 have been typical wins or blowouts. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't mind watching Hardpoint on Rewind, but the pros, I really didn't like playing it. It was only played 14% of the time. An average map would be played 20% of the time, just with the 5 maps that you have to choose from. So clearly the pros didn't like playing it that much, despite the pretty competitive nature of those games. The search notes I thought were just hilarious because they are so spot on. Rewind was played exactly 20% of the time, which is exactly what you'd expect from a typical map. And the margin of victory on Rewind games, identical to the margin of victory on the other maps. And when you go back, the past 5 seasons of the CDL, or 4 seasons, the search margin of victory is always 2.8 or 2.9. It's just locked in. Like a 6-3 win is average. So I just thought it was funny. We're right on that number, even just through 2 weekends. Yeah, just thought of including that. And then, control. This is the big one. Just the fact that we have a third control map now is great, because the veto process is just so chaotic when you only have 2 control maps, because if you win that coin flip to determine Team A or Team B, you literally get to pick which of the 2 control maps you play. And for most every team, that was Vault. The fact that we got Vault 22 out of 24 matches so far is insane to me. It just goes to show that Protocol is not it. And I think we still won't see that much Protocol at all. I'm just assuming that Hacienda Control is better. That's good that we at least have maybe 2 good control maps. I'm curious to see if Protocol leaves the map pool later on, if we get another decent competitive map for control, maybe in a month or 2. But yeah, the fact that we've seen Vault 92% of the time in control is just, it's nauseating. Just knowing that you're going to load into a series and map 3, we're going to Vault, is like, I don't know, it gets stale after a while, just seeing the same map in the rotation over and over again. Excited that Hacienda is in. It should be a pretty good map, I think. Early reports in Hardpoint are that it plays to blowouts more. I don't know, we might get less really competitive, heart-pounding Hardpoint games, but I expect the pros to adjust throughout the year and maybe bring that margin victory down as we go throughout the year. Excited to see how Hacienda plays out. Interested to see how often we see it this weekend, just because this is the first weekend it's been in the map pool. I think typically we get new maps and they're played quite a bit in the first couple of weekends. TBD on if we see a lot of it or what, but excited nonetheless that it's in.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if this is less competitive, but again, that you're dragging that hardpoint margin to victory up even higher then, right? Mm-hmm. So that is, again, we talk about key numbers in hardpoint. We take 50 as roughly a key number, but we're getting to that point now where, like, at a certain point, if basically the game is spread as saying, oh, okay, this team is not competitive with this other team, if you think they are more competitive, then at a certain point, a team isn't even trying to win by more than, say, 50, right? The lines, I think, are like 50 and 100. Because the thing is, at a certain point, the correct play, if the correct play is to let the other team get over 200, and you secure the next hill. And there's a couple money hills on this in the map sets as well. In many ways, once you start, if that margin of victory keeps creeping up, then there's going to be a lot of value on some hardpoint spreads. Either way, right? If you think that if a hardpoint is close and the line is like 50, and you think, okay, they're going to play one of the blowout ones, and there's a lot of finagling goes in there, but the hardpoint spreads are going to be very interesting this year, I think. And again, the hilarious thing is Vault. I will say Vault is actually a surprisingly competitive control map. Lots of offensive wins, lots of defensive wins, which is hilarious. But I will say that with like a 92% chance, like when you just go to basic probabilities and stats, if something's happening 92% of the time, that's a very clear. There's not even, oh, it's 60-40. People prefer this or the other one. No, that's a very clear dislike of the other one, or almost hatred at that point of the other one. So we'll have to see. Maybe Hacienda can break in and we can get something like 60-40 Hacienda Vault. Maybe you get the odd protocol. We'll have to see. But yeah, it's at least we're going to get some variation on that. Yeah, so that we'll have to see how that works. I'd love to see Hacienda. I've never actually technically watched a live Hacienda before, so I hope we're going to have that on Friday. I'm actually pretty excited for that. Next up, yes, KHHX temporarily stepping away from Vegas Falcons. Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, so I think it's Kix, or Khalid is his name, Khalid. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it, but he was like the one decent player on Vegas Falcons through the first 4 matches. But yeah, some unfortunate news that he's stepping away for some personal matters. This was a statement put out by Vegas Falcons coach Luti. And yeah, we haven't received confirmed reports of who his replacements are, but Vegas Falcons do have an academy team of other Saudi Arabian players, so it will likely be one of those guys. And rumors are that King Abadi is also getting benched for one of those academy players as well. So Vegas Falcons could have half of their lineup as new players coming into this weekend. And that's not ideal, especially when you're already the worst team in the league by quite a margin. So, yeah, it's not great. Hopefully Kix comes back somewhat soon. This, at least to me, doesn't sound like an issue where he'll be gone for the rest of the season. Hopefully he'll be back in a week, a month, something like that, because he really was like the only player who was putting up good performances for this Falcons team. Yeah, with Vegas, you mentioned earlier, like, they have a lot of money, and with all of these teams that start the year poorly, team changes come relatively quickly. We're already seeing one from them this weekend. But just the dynamic of the Vegas Falcons makes it tricky to like sign big name players, I feel like. Pred is obviously going through some other personal matter. That sounds more serious than what this is with Kix, but I don't think it's as easy as like Vegas Falcons throw Pred a giant bag of money and he goes, yeah, I'll play for you guys. Like, the fact that the whole team, they speak Saudi Arabian or Arabic, I should say, when they play COD. And Pred is not, like, you can't just learn that overnight. So you either have to say, all right, we're calling out everything in English from now on, or Pred literally just plays with no comms because he doesn't know what his teammates are saying. It just is tricky. It's the same thing that Miami Heretics will struggle with. Miami Heretics, I like them quite a bit. Like, having an all-Spanish team, I think, works because there's enough of a player pool from guys who are from Spain or from any other Spanish-speaking country where, like, you can, if you wanted to piece together a team of all Spanish players and be competitive, you can do that. We've seen that from them over the years. The issue then comes into, like, all right, there's some Challengers players that are really good, but they don't know how to speak Spanish, or they speak some other, like, you just really have to reconfigure your team entirely, or only commit to, like, all right, we've got only Spanish-speaking players from here on out, or we only have Arabic-speaking players from here on out, or we bite the bullet and the guy who can't speak the language just goes in blind or deaf or whatever. It's tricky, right? It's tricky when you have this sort of a team. And, like, Luti, who I believe is British, has gone out of his way to learn Arabic somewhat so he can speak with his players, and that's awesome, but it's just tricky. I know Clayster's part of this organization now. It's just tricky. It just is a language barrier that is hard to beat. So yeah, I do worry that Vegas Falcons are just stuck in the mud this year. Maybe they prove me wrong and they go out and blow it up and then just sign decent Challengers players and they piece together something, but I don't know, man. It's tough. Well, so hopefully Kix can come back somewhat soon.
The thing is, so a couple things on that. So they're calling up some of the academy players. I'm assuming that most of, if not all, these have some knowledge of English. Some, at least most, if not all, the players have some knowledge of English. Maybe not perfectly fluent English, but some knowledge of English. The other thing is that the Vegas Falcons Academy team is all full of actually former CDL pros. So you've got what is it? I think Cammy was on there.
No,
No,
no.
no, Cammy's
No,
on.
they're all Arabic players, all the academy players. These guys I've never heard of, and they all have weird gamer tags and stuff.
I thought I
Like,
saw their new one was a bunch of. I can't remember. I thought I saw that on Twitter, but maybe I was wrong. But I thought their academy team was now all English. I thought.
maybe last I checked, it's if you go to the COD website and you click on the Vegas Falcons roster, Clayster's actually listed,
The
but it's all
academy team,
their.
not the.
Yeah, I think these guys are the academy team, like King and D700 and WXSL. Like all these guys are Saudi players. So I don't know, man. It's just tricky. You know what I'm saying? You're just limiting your player pool, or you're forcing yourself to like really make some drastic changes to the whole team. It's tricky. I don't know. I just wanted to say that, as I think Vegas knew what they got into when they wanted to do this, and I think they can maybe compete down the road. But yeah, losing your best player temporarily is definitely going to hurt.
We'll have to see. Yeah, that one will be interesting to follow, and we'll have to see. They play Optic on Friday, right? So we'll know really quickly this is going south or not. Moving on to minor one bracket preview. So this is the bracket, and we've talked a bit about some of these matches. Obviously, LAG versus Minnesota, Miami versus FaZe, Optic versus the Falcons, and then Vancouver versus Cloud9. So lots of different pieces in there. And then obviously the teams that have already earned buys are already London, Boston, Thieves, and Ultra. They have one round buys. This tournament is single elimination, not double elimination like the majors. But still, though, a really interesting Friday, Saturday, Sunday tournament. Some great matches. Should be a really interesting weekend. In terms of the match previews, we got the 4 matches. This is the first match, Minnesota versus LAG. LAG, actually a favorite. Remember, this is a rematch of the first game of the season when Minnesota beat LAG in a map 5. LAG minus 150 on the money line, LAG minus 1.5 plus 137, minus 9.5, a 9.5 point favorite in the hard point, 1.5 round underdog in the search, but minus 1 shaded at 163. So very close on that. And then 1.5 round favorite in the control, but that's shaded to plus 200. For me, I actually pretty much agree with market, which is interesting because originally this opened as Minnesota as a slight favorite. I think it was like minus 125, minus 110 for Minnesota. It's flipped. So now you actually have LAG as the favorite. And my model pretty much agrees with that. Not up to the 150, but I bought early, so I'm good on that. My model actually does like the LAG minus 1.5. I actually have a little bit of value on that one, but I do not like them in map 2 at all. I do not like LAG in search. But other than that, my model really likes them in hardpoint, really likes them in control. Do you agree with that assessment? Do you see Minnesota as potentially making this a competitive game, or do you think this is where LAG gets their revenge for week 1?
Yeah, as weird as it is to say, yeah, I'll take the 0-4 team to win. And yeah, this game is fascinating, I think, right? It's a rematch of the first game of the year, which was a really good series. Minnesota did get the round 11 in the game 5 to take it, but man, you look at map by map in that series, and I think LA Gorillas probably deserved the win more than Minnesota. I know they had game 1 was super, super close. I believe it went to Rocker. Game 5, I just said, was around 11. But the maps LAG won, they won pretty comfortably, and I believe the control was around 5 for Rocker. Rocker squeaked by with the win, but everything that happened after that series, I think, is good data to point to LAG as the better team, despite not winning again. LA Gorillas had a pretty tough schedule besides this Rocker game, and they competed with everybody they played with. They couldn't get it done in any of the series, but they were right there in more than one of those. And Rocker, again, their second match of the year, I believe they played Boston, and squeaked by again. And after that, for Rocker, it was a lot of, okay, you're done for. And their second weekend did not go well at all. My numbers also point to LAG being the better team in this spot. Similar to you, yeah, I think Minnesota definitely has an advantage in search just based on like how these teams played in that first series and then how Minnesota looked. That does seem to be their strong suit. But LAG and the Respawns, I think, are definite favorites, and I think that's going to carry them through. Yeah, your model shows a little bit of value on the LAG -1.5. Mine does as well. I don't think it's crazy to think that LAG could win that map 2. Like, my odds say Minnesota is a giant favorite in map 2 like yours does, but with Search and Destroy, we know it's a little random here and there. The best and the worst search team, if you pair them up, the best team is probably going to win 70% of the matches, where in Hardpoint, you'd expect the better team to win 90% of the time or something crazy. So, yeah, LAG, I think, is the play here, but it's just fascinating to see, like, how much the price has shifted from when these teams played a month ago to now. He is still the favorite, which is a little surprising to me. I was hoping Rocker would be the favorite just based on their head-to-head and their match records through 4 games. But yeah, still, the LAG price has dropped substantially, where I think it is a good play. And this is a good team. We know that players on LAG are good. We know they'll get wins. I think this is a really good bounce-back spot for them. So I'm with you. I prefer LAG quite a bit here.
Yeah, I think this could be an interesting game for that. Miami versus FaZe. This is where this gets a little interesting. FaZe -350 on the money line, -1.5, -138. 29.5 point favorites in the hard point, 1.5 round favorites in the search, and then 1.5 round favorites in the control, but it is shaded to +200. For the modeling, my model actually has Miami, not a favorite, but some value on Miami, specifically the Miami +1.5. Books have it priced at about 50-50. I have that priced at about 60-something%. But the interesting thing is where the model sees the value. My model really likes Miami in control, doesn't hate them in search, but really doesn't like Miami in hardpoint, really likes FaZe in the hardpoint. So it's a little interesting, right? The thing is, I probably will bet Miami here, but at the same point in time, if you told me that FaZe swept this, I could see it, right? This is, okay, they're really good at hardpoint, and okay, yeah, maybe they're... If you think about FaZe struggled a little bit, and then they've since recovered, and they've gotten a little bit better, as that comes down, as we come down with that now, we're at a point now where, if their past games were too harsh on them, if they're better than their worst games, then the model is fundamentally wrong, right? So if you give them a couple extra bonus points there for control, you shave that number down for Miami, and then you shave down the search, and then you shave down the control number, this seems like it could be a very quick 3-1 in that case. Now, is that what this is going to be? I don't know. Is FaZe really that bad at control? I don't think so. I think that number seems a bit anomalous. But this is the thing, is the fact that this one worries me a bit. This is going to be the question, is how legit FaZe actually is or not. If FaZe is legit, this is the 3-1-3-0. But if FaZe is not legit, this goes to a 5. And that's the thing. I just can't figure out which side I want to be on this. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, this one is very tricky. I think FaZe are probably the biggest talking point in the league through the first 2 weeks, just because they really have not looked themselves. And a lot of their scrim results, and I know scrims aren't league matches, so we need to take them with a little bit of a grain of salt, but nonetheless, FaZe just don't seem that dominant this year. And maybe they just skate on through the season and they end up as the 4 seed at champs or the 3 seed at champs, because they can get by beating teams like Miami and Vegas and whoever. But it's just weird. Miami, on the other hand, have looked like what we expected from them going into the year. The one thing, and I get why your control numbers are so boosted up for Miami. Miami are perfect in control. They are 4-0. They have won pretty comfortably in all of those series. Their hardpoint and search, a little shaky. So I get that. The one thing that's really not going for them going into this weekend is the control meta is shifting quite a bit. You're adding a 3rd control map to the rotation now, and maybe that throws a wrench into things. Maybe their preferred map of Vault, which is pretty much everyone's preferred map, maybe that gets vetoed in this series, right? That's a legit possibility now if FaZe want to play Hacienda. A lot of unknowns going into this match. My gut tells me that Atlanta -1.5 at -138 Like, you're not going to get a better price on FaZe throughout the year. This could be the low point for FaZe. I think it is. I do think they're going to figure this out. And I think Miami is a good team to figure it out against. It's tough. I do think Atlanta -1.5 is the preferred play for me, but I don't feel great about it whatsoever. I really just want to see them look themselves for at least one match. And I know they got a win to end their second weekend, but that was against Vegas Falcons, and I don't know. I'm putting any match against Vegas Falcons just in the garbage. They're a whole nother animal. I need to see FaZe look good against some other competition. If they can pull out a nice 3-1, comfortable 3-1, or even a sweep in this, that is going to go a long way, I think, for their confidence moving forward. And I think maybe the shift with the map set will help them. But yeah, it's just weird to see because FaZe has been so consistent for so long. Now, they haven't won every major they've played, but they are consistently top 3 pretty much every tournament we see them in. But actually, Shotzi made a great point on one of his streams recently that he was of the opinion, like, yeah, FaZe are fine. Like, they will bounce back eventually. They're too good not to. And he referenced their Optic from last year. Optic went 6-1, I believe, in the Major 2 qualifiers, and then finished runner-ups at Major 2, then went 7-0 in qualifiers, and then proceeded to win Major 3, I believe. And then Major 4 comes along, and they go 1-6 in qualifiers and lose their first round match in the losers bracket at Major 4. So Optic were on top of the world, like winning basically every match they played. And then for some reason, Major 4 qualifiers come along and they crash out and look like one of the worst teams in the league. It can happen to really good teams. It's just we haven't seen it with FaZe yet, so it feels super weird. So yeah, I do expect them to bounce back. I think this price is very affordable for FaZe, so I prefer that. But for me, it's a stay away just because there's so many unknowns.
Yeah, I think the stay away logic makes a lot of sense for me here, so I think I probably will stay away from this one as well. But yeah, I think it should be an interesting watch though, and I think maybe if you want to bet something on Miami control, I think there might be some value there. Moving on to Optic versus Vegas Falcons. Yeah, nothing particularly competitive here. -2.5, -350, 95.5 point hard point spread, 2.5 round search spread. No control line. My model kind of underestimates that, but again, mine's not player adjusted, right? With the loss of their one really good player, this could all be just even worse, right? And especially with the control, the model thinks that Vegas isn't horrible at control, but they're definitely not good at control either, or maybe just Optic isn't as good. But yeah, no, this one is kind of unwatchable. This could go real fast.
Agreed, yeah. I think the only things that are even playable of that odds board is the Optic Map 1 spread. I think it was 95.5 they're favored by. And I saw that at first and I'm like, man, that's a huge number. But then I looked into it, right? Vegas Falcons are 0-6 in hardpoint so far. On average, they're losing by about, I think, 74, 75 points each hardpoint they play. So it's okay, they could cover 95, but then you remember, oh, they're without their best player, they're probably without another one of their starting lineup players from the first couple of weekends, and maybe it's a good thing for them, this new lineup, but I tend to think it's not, and then you go, oh yeah, and also they're playing Optic Texas, so yeah, I think you could justify taking Optic -95.5 if you wanted to. The Search and Destroy spread, it's at 2.5. I would maybe stay away from that just because Vegas Falcons do have a search win under their belt, and asking a team to cover 2.5 rounds is a lot, even Optic. Yeah, I don't know. This one's going to be over very quickly, I suspect. And yeah, congrats to Optic they didn't get a bye with their 5 seed, but man, you pulled a good team to play in round 1, that's for sure.
Yeah, pretty rough there. You don't want to see that. Moving on to match to the fourth game, the last game of day one. Vancouver versus Cloud9. Vancouver plus 125, Cloud9 minus 175, minus 1.5 plus 125 there. 17.5 point favorites for Cloud9 in the hard point, 1.5 round favorites in the search, and then actually technically an underdog in the control, but it's shaded heavily. So basically a toss-up in the control. I disagree. I actually have Vancouver as the favorite here. My model likes them to win outright, likes the plus 1.5, really likes them slightly likes Cloud9 in hard point, really likes Vancouver in control, and then has basically search as a toss-up. Where are you on this? I like Vancouver to win this thing, actually. I think they have a decent chance to win this one outright. I don't think they're nearly as bad as the books are saying, or rather Cloud9 is not nearly as good as the books are saying.
Yeah, it's a little weird how close my numbers are to yours, and I'm not referencing my numbers this week on the slides just because I'm waiting another week or two just to make sure that the numbers are dialed in. We've only seen 4 matches for each team. Yeah, like one map means so much to my numbers and my model, but it is eerie how similar we are. I know. So yeah, based on your numbers, you have Vancouver as slight underdogs in map 1 and map 2. And slight favorites in map 3, or heavy favorites in map 3, I should say. And mine are pretty much spot on where you are. Like, I think most likely scenario is these teams split hard points, they split the searches, it comes down to control, and Vancouver should be the favorite in that game mode from what we've seen from these teams through 4 control matches each. I will say again, control meta, much different now that there's a third map involved, but just knowing that Vancouver have been the better control team, and I think significantly through those 4 matches, I think it does make them a slight favorite in this spot. So at the very worst, Vancouver is a coin flip in this game, and if that's the case, plus 125 on a coin flip sounds great to me. I'm with you on this one. I think Vancouver are the right side. Both of these teams got 1 win out of 4 matches so far. Their map percentages are pretty similar, and actually Vancouver does have a leg up when you just look at map win percentage. Yeah, I think this should just straight up be a toss-up. Like, honestly, if I was the bookmaker, I would just make each of these teams minus 120 and call it a day. So yeah, I'm with you. I think Vancouver has some value for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. Moving on to the futures here, we've got Thieves. So the board itself has Thieves as the favorite at plus 200. That's actually pretty good odds there. Optic at plus 333, Toronto at plus 350, Ravens plus 500, FaZe plus 550. When was the last time you thought you'd see FaZe at a 5-1 to win a major tournament? Breach 14-1, Cloud9 16-1, LAG 33-1, Surge 40-1, Rocker 50-1, Heretics 80-1, and Vegas 500-1. That's probably too low. That's probably too high. They need to be even lower. And to reach the final, it's interesting because actually Optic is a heavier favorite to reach the final than Thieves. But outside of that, everything else breaks roughly the way you'd expect it to. My model significantly differs. My model really doesn't like Thieves. Now, there's probably some reasons for that. I think some of their matches were a little closer than they should have been, and I think more games come out, the longer it will take for that. But my model sees some value on Carolina and some value on LEG. Now, the problem with that, though, is, and less value on Atlanta, but the problem with that is that, again, there is only 4 matches, so the model's saying what it sees, but it's not seeing a ton of difference at this point. There's not a lot it can do. We'll have to see, but for now, I'm probably not playing much here. I think my model is significantly underestimating LA Thieves, and we'll eventually see that when they play. But yeah, Carolina is interesting. Is Carolina really that good? I don't know. Is FaZe really that bad? I don't know. My model seems to think so. But again, very small sample size on just a 2-week sample size. Not a lot of data right there.
Yeah, these prices, I think, at glance, do make some sense, but when I ran my sims on the tournament, they're actually not too dissimilar from yours again. There are a couple places where they differ. But yeah, my model also not a huge fan of LA Thieves through 4 matches, which is a little bit of a surprise. I think it has to do with their schedule hasn't been the strongest, and they haven't been dominant so far, I would say. They've been good, and they've taken care of business, but plus 200 is a little steep, and they do have to play FaZe or Miami if Miami were to win, but More than likely, they're going to play FaZe in round 2, and FaZe is just such a wild card right now that one of those teams is getting eliminated by the second round of these matches. So that's a big thing. The other thing with Thieves is that Toronto is on their side of the bracket as well. So the seeding for this minor is a little chaotic, if you ask me. Just the fact that Carolina are the 1 seed, that's insane. Yeah, Atlanta are the 10 seed. They're going to play Miami in round 1. Sorry about that, Miami. You got the 7 seed, go play FaZe. That just seems wrong. The LAG Minnesota opening match is interesting just as the repeat from that opening match of the year, but we think LAG should be favored despite losing to them. It's just a weird tournament, I think. It's going to play out in a strange way. I don't think there's any way it doesn't, just based on how the seeding is and what we've seen so far from some of these teams. But as far as my model goes, in terms of to win the whole thing, the biggest values it sees is actually in the same section of the board, which is the Optic Boston sort of portion. So Optic, according to my model, are one of the best, if not the best team in the league through 4 matches. And I can buy that totally. If they were to play LA Thieves, I think the bookmakers would probably make Thieves a favorite, but not significantly. Like, Optic could very well win that series. So yeah, to my model, Optic look like the best team. They essentially have a first round bye because they're playing Vegas. The interesting thing is that they're playing Boston in round 2 should they win. And Boston is the one team that Optic lost to in the qualifiers. But again, that was the opening weekend when Optic had Pred in the lineup. Not saying Pred's a bad player, but it's a different lineup than what they have now. And I think Optic in that series versus Boston would still be favorites despite having lost to them already. And then you go from there, like Optic are on that good side of the bracket without Thieves, without FaZe, without Toronto. So it should be a somewhat easy path for Optic, at least to make the grand finals, I think. They're most likely going to run into Carolina in that semifinal round should they get there. And as good as Carolina has looked so far, I'm not 100% bought in. I don't know. It just, for their preseason expectations, like the fact that they're undefeated and just crushing teams, it's a little weird. It's definitely something to take note of. And I do think Carolina is valuable in the to reach the final odds, but I just don't know if they have the firepower to go through all the way and win this minor. To me, it's Optic to win outright. I think you can make a case for Boston, as weird as it sounds because they're going to meet each other in the second round. But yeah, I don't hate a play on Carolina just because their path is pretty easy and they haven't done anything yet to think that they're bad, but Toronto, you have a little bit of value on. I don't hate that either. The problem with that is that they're in a tough sort of section of the bracket. I think their first round game should be somewhat easy, getting to play LAG or Minnesota, but it's like you're guaranteed to play Thieves or FaZe in that second round, and then you're likely going to meet Optic or Carolina in the final. So yeah, it's a lot to think through. There's a lot of permutations of how this could go, but yeah, I don't hate where your model is on a lot of these teams, but just some other things to keep note of with some of these middle seeds that could cause some chaos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I think this could be interesting. And then obviously, of course, we have these numbers too, the odds to reach the final. Again, my model weirdly likes Carolina to get there, but I think that's beating up on LA Thieves in the semifinals there. Texas and Toronto there, up there as well, but about 40-40 there. But then LAG and Minnesota, right? If you're looking at 22-1 to reach the final, maybe put something on that. Not a lot, but just a little something maybe. We'll see. Moving on that, models versus markets, here's our plays for this week. We actually have very similar plays. To be fair, there's only 4 games. We both like LAG versus Minnesota. I've got them moneyline minus 150. I actually bet them earlier. I got them, and I think 110 minus 150. I'll still take that, even though my model doesn't love it. I'll take it. You've got the minus 1.5, which I actually really like that too. I didn't want to copy you, so obviously if I'm betting the minus 1.5, I'd probably be betting the minus 150 as well for the money line. You've got Vancouver outright against Cloud9. I've got not Seattle, I said it again. I've got Vancouver. It's tricky, right? Because
it's really tricky. Yeah,
that one is tricky because it's the same logo. It just moved a little bit north. But no, Vancouver plus 1.5 versus Cloud9. I will play Miami plus 1.5 versus Atlanta. whatever. Let's see what happens here. Let's play it out. Let's see what happens. And then you've got Optic plus 33, plus 333 to win minor number 1. Anything else you'd like to say about that play? Is that's a pure bracket play for you, right?
Yeah. I just think with Optic, they're one of the best teams in the game. I think it's hard to make an argument against that, and the fact that they're on what I view as the preferred side of the bracket. I'm plus 33. Yeah, that's hard to say. Plus 333 is a pretty good price because you basically have to think they win a quarter of the time. And I do. My model says they win about 30% of the time, and I think that's pretty accurate. I like Optic quite a bit. Their odds to reach the final are horrible for some reason. They have the shortest odds to reach the final at minus 150. Do not play that if you're interested in Optic. Just play them to win that final game at plus 333. And it just makes so much more sense. They are very likely to make the final, I think, based on where they are. But if you think they can make it that far, I think they've got a fighter's chance to win the whole thing. Yeah, I'm rolling with that. And yeah, LAG and Vancouver, I think we're very much aligned on. And yeah, feel free to copy my picks in weeks to come because that's totally okay. But yeah, I appreciate the differences as well.
Yeah, sounds good. So next pod, Major 1 week 3. We're going to go back to qualifying matches after this week. That will be released on Thursday of next week in preparation for the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Other than that, enjoy this weekend, guys. You've got a lot of amazing content this weekend. You've got, obviously, the Call of Duty Minor on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You've got college football playoffs on Thursday and Friday. And you've got the NFL playoffs on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday night. So an incredible weekend of some sports here this weekend. For as far as we go, good luck, everybody, this week, and we'll see you next week. See you, everybody.